Hi all, hope you're well. This is the second of two unboxing and setup videos for my first ever 3D printer, the AnkerMake M5. In this video I'll show you how to build the printer and some of the pitfalls to watch out for, and we'll print the ubiquitous benchy bolt for good measure. Enjoy! Okay, let's start building the AnkerMake M5. So these are the things you're going to need. You're going to need your toolkit. I could use my own tools, but hey, let's play with the stuff that Anker gave us and see how that goes. You're going to need 1, 2, 3 bags of bolts, the spindle holder, all the big hunky bits, so the arm assembly and the base. Here's almost the most important thing. I hope you didn't throw the packaging away, because this is how it ships. Nice and sturdy. Look, we pick this guy up and we move him down a bit, and now we've got this held firmly. So we can start attaching the base to it. So don't throw the packaging away, that's really important. Okay, next thing we're going to do is, before we mount the base to the uprights, the verticals, let's just get this off for safekeeping. And then the next thing we need to do is take this base off, because the uprights are going to come in from that side, and actually it's probably going to be easier just to show you. There we go, and you can see the uprights are going to come in through here, and then the cables are going to attach to the stepper motors here. So let's get this off, put that somewhere safe. Okay, so now we're ready to mount the base onto the gantry. Probably sticking it on top of a little box just to get a little bit of clearance is going to be a helpful thing to do here. So we're going to have to make sure that the cables pass all the way through these gaps here. And you can just slide it on there. And at this point, we can lift it off if you're feeling brave. Then we can start tightening up the 8 M5 bolts. Now what to do is initially just put them in nice and loosely. You need to make sure that this base here, is completely settled on both sides. So do up the bolts carefully and keep checking that it's like that and not like that. Once you've got around 4 of the bolts in, just double check again that the vertical is sitting right, and then put the rest of the bolts in. By the way, these bolts, I don't know if you can see, but that blue stuff on there is Loctite, or something that looks a little bit like Loctite, and that's a kind of glue paint that is for anti-vibration. So that means that when you put these in and tighten them up, you tighten them up relatively tightly. I mean, you're not building a truck here, but you tighten them up relatively quickly, and then that Loctite should stop the bolts shaking themselves loose through vibration. Once you've got them tightened up, let's save ourselves a little bit of stress just by double checking another couple of things before we go any further. So first off, let's make sure that you can't see that silver base at the bottom there on both sides, and check all the way around. Next, just make sure that it's a nice sturdy fit, it's not going anywhere. Then let's make sure that the cables are definitely not being fouled all the way in, both sides, and that we haven't fouled the cable for the stepper motors. Okay, so that's looking good. So what we need to do now is connect up the cable for the motors Now you shouldn't need to force it, so it should just drop in with a satisfying thud. Same thing for this one. Next we've got the USB control cables, and they're handily labelled left, left, right and right. So how much harder could it be? Now these are the best USB cables I've ever seen. So we're going to slot them in like that. Oh, it's so satisfying. And we're going to slot this one in. But remember what I was saying about vibration. So we don't want these things working their way loose. So now we're going to use the M2.5 bolts, and we need 4 of these to make sure these cables stay absolutely put. Okay, that's the 4 cables in. Now, attention to detail for Anker here is just great. This thing is so well manufactured. So the first point about the attention to detail, what do you know, I've lost it, oh no, here we go, is that these 4 little bolts there, they make sure you have a spare. These 8 bolts in here, they make sure you have a spare. So when you drop one on the carpet, or the dog eats it, then you know you're in good shape. The next great thing is the cable management. So we've got a little slot here that we are going to put this cable into, and then we're going to slot it into here, and then the same thing here. And what we're doing here is making sure that these cables don't get trapped by anything, get wrapped around motors or get eaten up when we put this base plate back on, which we're going to do now. You shouldn't have to force that. If you're forcing it, that probably means the cables aren't seated right. So stop, take it back off, check it, put it back on. Final part of the main assembly is to fit the filament spool holder. So that can either go vertically, like this, or it can go horizontally. Of course it has to go on this side because this is where the filament feeds in. How you mount it doesn't really make any difference to the printer, completely down to where the printer is going to sit in your environment. So for me, I don't have a lot of space inside, but I've got plenty of headroom, so I'm going to mount it vertically. So we're going to use the M4 bolts for this. And of course, because it's Anker, you get 5 even though you only need 4. This doesn't need to be done up particularly tightly. That said, don't do it too loosely because obviously there's going to be a big heavy spool here shaking around. So squeeze and tight. So that's the printer effectively assembled. So the last couple of touches before we go and do some setup checks. First is, let's make sure to take out these packing that stopped the bed moving. There's one at the front and one at the back. And then of course the most satisfying part of any electronic purchase, peeling off the bit of sticky plastic. So what's next? We go printing? No, we don't. So if you check some of the Kickstarter comments and some of the Discord server chat, these things are incredibly well made. They're incredibly well packed, but some people have complained about issues that end up being solved by making sure that the tension on the belts are right. And there are, how many belts are there? Well, there's at least 3 that I can see. So there's helpful information on the support part of the AnkerMake website, showing in great detail how to check these. So we're just going to do a quick finger test. So there are 3 belts, and what you want to be doing is just touching them gently here, and they should be springy, not sloppy and not massively over tight. So it shouldn't be like a really well stretched rubber band, but you definitely should feel some return, some bounce without it being too sloppy. The other 2 belts are on the bed, And again, same thing. That's nice and springy. In fact, you might even be able to hear that. Or maybe not. Now, interestingly, this one is a lot looser. And all you have to do is feel the 3 belts. And if any one doesn't feel quite the same as the other one, then you're going to want to do something about that. So at the back we have these 2 threaded bolts, and we can get to them here. So this one feels okay. This one, I'm going to tighten it up just half a turn at a time, and I'm just tapping to see whether we're getting similar kind of feedback. And I think we are there. Now we're not done yet. If you've had to adjust these 2 base belts, then we need to make sure that the tension on each of them is the same. So there's a trick that we need to do to get that working. By the way, Anker have a great video about this. I'll link to that down below, but I'll just show you real quick what we do. So what we need to do to balance them is these little silver wheels here have 3 bolts in them each. So we're going to remove all 6 bolts. And to make sure you can get to them, obviously just move this thing at the back now. So move it around and remove each of the 6 screws. And you can move it backwards and forwards. Now, just move the whole plate backwards and forwards a few times, and that should balance the tension, and they feel good. I know all we have to do is put our 4 little bolts back in. Okay, now we're ready to go. We've got power, everything's a lovely shade of green, and we're going to go through the initial setup menu. So English works for me. Talks about the ambient temperature, so 15 degrees to 35 degrees. So that's quite interesting because I have the joy of living in Scotland, and it never goes above 35 degrees centigrade, so that's not going to be a problem. However, it definitely does go below 15 degrees. So this is going to live in the house with me. It's not going to stay out in the garage where last night, for example, it was -7. I think that would be a bit too much. I know that's the operating temperature, but clearly this machine wants to be looked after and coddled somewhere warm. So the next thing we've got to do is get it connecting to the internet. So the best way to do that is to use the AnkerMake app. So make sure you've got that downloaded from the App Store or Google Play, and that's what we're going to do next. Start up the AnkerMake app, click on Add Printer, and it will use Bluetooth to find the printers, so we'll have to be quite close by. Select the printer. The printer will display a pin, so enter that into the app. Then select a Wi-Fi network to connect to, enter the password, and let it connect. Once it's connected, let's give the printer a name. Click on Done, and that's it. So now we've got the printer connected to the internet, it can phone home and find out probably that it needs a firmware update. Don't say no to this, make sure that you do update it. Bear in mind that at the time of writing in December 22, tens of thousands of these units have shipped, and Anker are only just discovering some issues that they may need to address in firmware. So this is definitely a good thing to be doing. So that looks like it's going to take a minute or two, and then it's going to restart. Excellent, well done. Right, firmware upgrade complete. Okay, what's next? So the next thing it's going to do is suggest that we do an auto level. So let's do that. Now, might sound dumb, but make sure that you've put the bed on. You want it auto leveled on the mat rather than direct to the bed. This will take about 10 minutes, so let's leave it doing that. This will be the first time we get to see the motors in action, so that should be quite exciting. So the first thing that it has to do is heat up, and you'll see that the light over here that was green is glowing amber as it brings it up to temperature, and it's trying to get it up to, well, it's not trying, it's going to bring it up to 180 degrees centigrade. Oh, so that means Don't touch that bit down there, that will be hot. The case itself isn't particularly hot, in fact, it isn't hot at all. But yeah, that's the business end. That's the bit we don't want to touch. Okay, we're off. So the bed is nice and toasty. I think it just turned itself off. Sorry, it just turned the display off. But I think it said that the bed might be about 50 degrees, something like that, centigrade. I love this stuff. So it says it's going to take 10 minutes, so that seems like a good opportunity for a glass of wine. Cheers. Okay, so we're on the last point here, only a few seconds, and we're done. And more importantly, it says it's successful. So what next? Well, we can't print if we don't have any filament, so I'm going to take this small pack, the 125 gram pack, and we're going to mount that and get it into the head. And to do that, from our shiny toolkit, we are going to need these little snips. So next stage, fit the filament. Before we do that, let's get the head up and out of the way. And to do that, we're going to go to Control and Move. And we're going to be pushing the Z axis up. Now, if you press the Z axis, it might prompt you to do a homing exercise. And if it wants to do that, let it do it. Why not? AnkerMake knows best, right? So we're going to go up a bit, up a bit, up a bit. And then you're going to think, oh my God, this is so slow. But that's because we're moving in, can't even read that, 1 millimeter increments. So make sure you've got 10 millimeter, and then you can get it. Okay, so we've got the filament and it's wrapped around here. So we're just going to push that out, or in fact, let's not, let's just cut it. So just slip it there, take that a little bit off. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that this filament gets tracked through nice and easily. So cut it at a 45-degree angle. Next, we're going to mount this up here. Now you want the filament to take the path of least resistance, literally. So make sure it's coming out on the same side that it goes in. And then we're going to feed it in here. And it's going to go all the way up around here and into there. So just keep pushing nice and gently. Pull it out a little bit, give it a shove. Keep going. Keep going until you meet resistance. That's it, stop now. And at this point, you want to press this button here, and you should get another couple of centimeters. We know we're in good shape when it's kind of locked in and it isn't going any further. Now you know that it should be working if you can feel the filament moving back here. And there we go. Perfect. Lovely job. Now we're ready to print. Now that took 2 or 3 attempts for me because it had to get from here all the way down to the hot end. By the way, this will be hot, so be careful when you're pulling it off. Now, if you've got a problem and you find that maybe you can't get this filament all the way through, then what can help is if you pull this outer sleeve out. Now, to do that, you'll see this little black ring here. If you push that down, then this outer sleeve lifts up. And then you can lift it out the way, push the filament through while pressing this button, and then drop this back down again. So let's try it one more time, make sure we're in good shape. And we are. So by golly, I think we're ready to print. Don't know why I meant to touch that. I was going to be hot. Don't touch it. Okay, now we're ready to print, so let's do it. So we can connect to it wirelessly from the PC, from the AnkerMake slicer and all that kind of exciting stuff, but it does ship with some local storage. And if you go in there, you see that we've got the famous 3D benchy, which is the little boat, and then there's a bunch of other things. So if you have a look in here, I think this is brilliant. So not only does it give you a view of what it's going to print, but it also tells you how much filament it's going to use. It's going to use 31 grams of my 125 gram reel. It's going to take just under 2 hours. So that's exciting, but I think we can't not do benchy, right? And that's going to take about 1/10 of my filament, and it's going to be a little bit faster. It's going to take 41 minutes. So let's give it a shot. 41 minutes. Go. It was interesting. So it's complaining about the studio light that I was using there. So I've turned that off, and now the camera seems to be happy. So now it's warming up. So that's it off. It seems to be going hell for leather, but this is my first ever 3D printer. And the reason that I went for the AnkerMake M5 is that every other printer in the market seemed to need all sorts of modifications, setup, screwing around just to get them working. This, assuming it prints the boat okay, stainless steel boarding perhaps, pretty much works straight out of the box. It's incredibly sturdy, incredibly well put together. The software is slick. It's a nice user interface. I think it's a good buy, and I hope that's helpful to some people. Thank you. See you.